Hey, everybody. Good morning. Steve Biederman. It's Friday and it's February 10th, 2023. And I am really excited, really, to talk to you about the power of resilience in business. How do you bounce back from failure in business? This is an important one. And I've been thinking a lot about which way do I go about talking to you about this? Because I hope what ends up happening here is that this resonates for you, especially if you're an entrepreneur. But to do it right, what I've thought about is talking to you about some stories that I can bring you about things that have happened to me. And because, listen, I've faced many obstacles. I've faced walls that really most looks at it would say you shouldn't have gotten past them. And I did get to the other side of success. And then even in success, I've gotten to failure. So there's all sorts of this. But I think when we talk in general or read books or act out what we think is a failure, I sometimes don't believe that people understand the depth of it. It's almost like when you lose someone, like and someone dies in your life, or your dog or your cat or something, you lose them, and how deep and deep it hits you to where you honestly feel that there is no step left that you can take because it's just too deep. And in business, it's the same thing. So when we talk theoretically, we find ourselves not getting as deep as what failure in business really is. And so resilience that I'm talking about is the ability to live with that, to accept that, and to find a way forward, not just after that, but most of the time during your failure. Because you have to remember the next day keeps happening and you're still working and you still have to fulfill your business needs. And while you're doing that in a parallel path, you're devastated about something. So let me talk to you about a few stories with me. So when I first got into business, I wasn't planning to run a business. It was sort of fell into my lap, not in an easy way or a positive way, but I had a choice to make. I was consulting. I think if you've heard this podcast before, you know some of the story. And I found myself having to make a decision to leave a business that the people I was working for, consulting for, were going to close or to stay. And I decided I couldn't abandon the customers that we had. I didn't really have money, but nor a desire to run a company, but I couldn't abandon these customers, which, by the way, in time and over time, has really met my core value and really has led me in my business. But that's not the point. So I end up, taking on a business, and that business had X million of dollars of debt. And I wasn't expecting that. And it hit me the second week I was in the business that not only had I taken on a business, but that I didn't have money to run, nor capability, nor training, but I also had this huge debt and I didn't have any idea what to do with it. But I solved that problem. And that's not actually the story I'm going to tell you. The stories, I have three of them. The first one was this. I had gotten through my first year of running this technology business called TouchStar. And it was impossible, if you ask me. I did have debt. I didn't know what I was doing. Our product was not working well. We would make a sale and have to travel to a customer, and I didn't have money to even travel to a customer. So one way or the other, I finally got to where I believed that I could get to the next week and get to the next week. And if you had asked me why I was doing this, or did I believe someday we'd be wealthy and happy and successful, I would have said, I have no idea. I'm not even working towards that. I'm just trying to survive the moment because I just can't abandon these customers. And that was the entire thing. And it was a driver for me. So I guess the first lesson I learned was find a driver for you and hopefully make it something a little bit outside of you so it's not all about you. It's about something about you that you want to do out in the world, that you want to have an impact on some level. So anyway, I'm finally going, and it was very hard, and I've got a mountain of debt, but I'm moving forward, and I'm making my payroll most of the time, and people started to get to know who we were, and I had some referrals, and one day a vendor of mine, my main vendor, the vendor that had the middleware piece of my software built around it, that I could not act or work. I had no product without the combination of my product and this vendor's product. They had a key too. So, they could turn on and off their software just like I could mine. So we were in tandem going out to market. And one day in my office, the CEO of that company came in. And by the way, I was pretty proud because I had built a line of credit with them that was big. So I knew that I was making them a lot of money and I was making my payments. It was a weekly payment thing. And we were just both starting to be successful. And that CEO flew out from New York, and I didn't know they were coming. And he came into my office, and I said, "Hey, how are you? What are you doing here? Are you in town for something?" He said, "Yeah, I came to see you." I said, "Well, great, come on in." And we went into my boardroom. I mean, it was a little room with a little table in it, but I called it my boardroom. And we start talking, and he was very nice and complimentary that I had survived, and he was shocked. He didn't think I could do it, but against all odds, I did it. He appreciated that we were making our payments. Anyway, he looks over at me and he says, "Look, I want you to read this." And he hands across the table a security agreement that had been signed by the people that owned the company before me. And it was one that I was not familiar with. But what it did, it tied all of the debt that our company had with him into a condition that on any given day, he could call in all the money we owed him in like 10 days. And if we couldn't pay him, the company would become his. All of our assets would become his. It was a crazy asset agreement or a security agreement. And nonetheless, he handed it to me. So I read it, but we're good, relatively friendly with each other. And I wasn't thinking that was a problem other than I was surprised. And he said, "Hey, right now you've built up about $300,000 of credit with me." And I said, "Yeah, and we're making our payments and we're all doing good. And that means that we're selling a lot." And he said, "Right. And I think you've done a great job." And he said, "I know you have a partner. And here's the thing. I'm going to take your company. I am going to call in this debt." And I said, "But Dave, it isn't really debt. It's credit that you've allowed me to do." He said, "Well, yeah, I've, out of the kindness of my heart, allowed you to do it, but I always knew I had this agreement." And he said, "Let me be honest, Steve. I was hoping you would build up this much with me, because at that point, I know you can't pay it in 10 days. And so I'm telling you, I'm going to take your company. I'm going to give you a formal notice. And at the end of it, I'm going to say to you that I will bring you back in as a CEO. I will give you more ownership in this new entity than I suspect you have with your partner." And I said, "Well, what about my partner?" He said, "Yeah, that's business, isn't it? He isn't doing much. I don't really want him in the business. This is to your benefit. And sorry, leave. That's the way it is." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to abandon my partner." and I didn't really want to be partners with you. He said, well, you don't really have a choice, right? So at that moment, I threw him out of the office. I was like in shock. I didn't know what to do. And he was right. My partner was kind of worthless, but it didn't matter. I still had a commitment to him. I didn't know what to do. Did not know what to do. So I ended up trying to run our business, and I went to a lawyer, and I told him my situation. And he said, well, we can try for an injunction, but you have to do that in New York. I said, I can't do that in New York. We don't have time to file that in New York. I have an idea. Go for an injunction here in Arapahoe County, Colorado, and and let's use it to buy some time. He said, yeah, but you won't win it because they'll throw you out of court. Even if they take you into a court, agree to a court moment, you're going to get thrown out because it's the wrong jurisdiction. I said, that's fine. It'll buy me, he said, maybe it'll buy you 2 more weeks. So I said, okay, now I'm at 3 weeks. So I have 3 weeks to figure out how to come up with this money. And sure enough, at the end, by the way, we ended up getting it thrown out of court. They said, you really have a good case here, but it's the wrong jurisdiction. So I'm looking and I'm struggling to find out what is the answer. And I came up with one. I won't go into the details of it, but it was very complicated. It required us calling every one of our customers and being clear with them of what could happen, and that potentially their software and their business could be turned off and their business could be damaged. And I solicited everybody's support in this plan behind the scenes that I had. Because remember, it was a plan that I didn't have money. So in theory, he absolutely could have taken the company. And I came up with this plan, and let me just say, I did it, and I survived that moment. And that's just one instance of how difficult things can be in business. The second I got some modicum of success, someone tried to steal my business. And by the way, that happens. Many of you are listening. It can happen to you. But did I quit? No. And did I find a way? Yes. And so when we say things like, look, just take the next step forward, just take the next step forward, remember that those moments are so paralyzing, so disabling that you face that it theoretically, yeah, take a next step forward, but come on, that is hard as heck. One other quick thing, I'm not going to go into all 3, but I want to tell you something else. I'm in the UK, and we had opened up an office in the UK, and we were spending quite a bit of money in the UK, and we were failing in the UK. And it was costing us some very serious money. Again, money that we really didn't have. But we had invested 2 years in the UK, being a UK corporation, trying to be as successful as we were in the United States. And we have to remember, in any reasonable growth business, money is king, and money was tight. And I just finally realized we were going to not be able to survive this, and that it was totally damaging our core business in the United States. I didn't know what to do. So I went out and I was going to close that business. And it was a hard lesson, and we would have lost about $2.5 million of investment over the time, which was a lot of money to us. Maybe it's a lot of money in any day. So I go out there, and I'm sitting there, and I'm meeting with my general manager or managing director. And I'm about to tell him what I'm going to do. And I also knew he had his own side business selling phone systems like PBXs. And it was just a side business that he and his son did. But I really liked this guy, and I felt very badly this was going to happen, and we are going to let people go. And the truth is, I knew there was a market there. We weren't pulling it off. And I felt bad for the guy who was managing director, because I honestly felt like it wasn't his failure, it was my failure. And I looked at him, and it just hit me while we're talking. And I pulled it out of my hat, because remember, there's maybe always one more thing you can do. And I said, hey, I have an idea. I've come here to close the office, but I have an idea. I want to give you the business if you want the business. And here's how I want to do it. I want to create a master distributorship where you have your PBX business and you can add our product to your business. You can use our branding in your market. And I am going to give you my software and I'm going to give it to you free for the first 6 months so you can go sell the hell out of it, as many licenses as you want. I don't care. They all have to get implemented. You can't put them in a closet. And then at the end of the day, we're going to start into an agreement that if you decide you want to continue, where there's a cost to further licenses. So you could go sell 1 million licenses in 6 months and you make all the money and we'll support it in every way. And he's like, yeah, why wouldn't I do that? And I came back and I had a board by that time, and my board was so mad at me. It's like, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? What are you doing? And I said, look, nothing from nothing is nothing. And we were going to close it, and that left us with nothing, actually with $2.5 million of debt and some angry people, by the way, because we still have some customers there, and I didn't even know how we were going to support them. Oh, that was the other deal. He had to support those customers. So we go about this, and once 6 months happened, he liked this, and he was making money. And so he said, how do you want to charge me for licenses going forward? And I said, look, if I could make in my first year a positive $1 million, I'd be like in heaven. So I'll tell you what, for the next year, from this date forward, give me $1 million and you can pay it any way you want over time. I don't care. I trust you. So it'll fit your model. I'm not going to ever be onerous with you. And then you can sell as many licenses as you want, just like you did in the first 6 months. He said, so as many as I want. I said, yeah. He took that deal. He sold a heck of a lot of licenses, and I had $1 million. And I said, but the second year, I'm going to raise it, and it's going to be closer to 2 million. I don't know if the market will cover it or if you want to, but that's what I'm probably going to do. And we did this for years. And he became the most successful business in our industry in that UK. He expanded actually to South Africa too, and it became really entrenched. And it promoted our name. We only had positive cash from it. He did his own development around it. We helped him with marketing, but he preferred his own. It was almost no investment for us except turn on licenses. And we took a negative thing where we were going to close that business, or I was going to close that business and lose money, which again was a punch to the gut, and said, wait a minute, maybe there's one more thing we can do. And we were audacious in it. Most people, nobody I know, in fact, would do something like that. But that's how far you may have to go to with your resilience, to be able to get to the next day. And remember, oftentimes business is about living to fight another day, but not just for that next day. And this is something it took me some years to learn, because I was fighting to the next day, but I didn't really have any long-term goal in mind. And it was to learn from these experiences. Don't sign security agreements that condemn your company to the trash yard. Don't just invest and build a business because you're high on a market. There are many creative ways you can do things. Don't overvalue your licenses, for example, in software, just because you think they're worth something. They're still worth nothing until somebody buys it. And when you're in the greatest amount of pain, remember this, that if there is nothing else, live to fight another day. And then when you get to the next day, at some point, force a longer term, a near, medium, and long-term goal that you can live with and you can accept. Last thing I want to tell you is this business became a world leader in its industry. And we started this way. We started poor. We started not knowing what we were doing with no plan except a core value of not abandoning our customers. And we knew because of that, we always had to find a way to live another day, because any day we couldn't, we would have abandoned those customers. So no matter how hurtful, painful, sick to the stomach and brain, and no sleep and anxiety it was, we continued to move forward. And that's a lesson that I've learned, which is continue to move forward. Take care. I look forward to talking to you next time. I want you to know what next time is going to be. It's about transparency. It's about honesty. It's about how honest are you going to be with your staff? What does transparency really mean? What does honesty really mean? And when you're talking to your people, to what degree does everybody get together and live with the same reality? It's an important thing to learn about, and I hope it helps you. And hey, have a great weekend. I love doing this. I hope you do too. Take care. Bye-bye.